All right, today we're going to dive into something pretty incredible. We're talking about just 9 verses from the Quran, but inside them is a complete blueprint, a whole playbook, really, for how a community can go from being completely paralyzed by fear to achieving absolute victory. It's this amazing story of social and spiritual transformation, all packed into one short passage.
So, how does a community actually do that? How do you transform fear into victory? That's the big question here, right? It's a question that people have asked for centuries. And what's so cool is that this story we're about to unpack, it gives us a step-by-step guide, both psychologically and strategically, to find the answer.
So where is this all coming from? We're looking at verses 243 to 251 in the Quran's second chapter, Al-Baqarah. And you should really think of this as a case study. I mean, it's a deep dive into leadership, social psychology, and pretty much the anatomy of any successful movement. And it's all laid out in just 9 verses. It's amazing.
Okay, part 1, from fear to faith. So where does a journey like this even begin? Well, the Quran tells us it doesn't start on a battlefield. No, it starts inside. It's an internal struggle first. This whole first stage is about making that crucial shift from a state of paralyzing fear to one of deep, unwavering faith.
And the story kicks off with this incredibly powerful image. I mean, listen to this. You've got thousands of people leaving their homes, just running away because they are terrified of death. The Quran just lays it all out right there from the very beginning. The core problem isn't some external enemy, it's their own fear. That's the real enemy. And trying to run from your destiny? It's completely useless.
So this gives us a really profound insight right off the bat. What the Quran is saying is that any real revival, any true comeback for a community can only happen after they've conquered that basic fundamental fear of death. You have to get over that first. It's like the psychological foundation for everything else that's about to happen.
Okay, so once that internal battle with fear is addressed, the Quran brings up the next big requirement: sacrifice. And when it talks about loaning God a goodly loan, it's not just talking about dropping a few coins in a charity box. No, this is a call to invest everything you have, your material resources, into the cause you truly believe.
What this really means is that the foundation for this whole revival has to be built on a willingness to commit, well, everything. You see, the verse just before this one called for the sacrifice of one's life, and now this one calls for the sacrifice of one's wealth. So it's a total all-in commitment of both people and property. You have to be ready to put it all on the line.
All right, part 2, the call for a leader. So the psychological foundation is set, right? The people are supposedly ready to act. But that desire gets put to the test almost immediately. And that brings us to the very next phase, the search for a leader.
So now the narrative zooms in and becomes this very concrete story about the ancient Israelites. They come to their prophet and they're all fired up, saying, "Appoint a king for us. We want to fight for our values, for the way of God." But listen to the prophet's response. He immediately asks this really sharp question. It's like he can already sense that there might be a huge gap between what they're saying now and what they'll actually do later.
And this right here is such a key lesson in social psychology, this commitment gap. It's so easy to be enthusiastic when it's all just talk, right? The Quran is pointing out this really common human weakness. There's a huge difference between saying you'll do something and actually doing it. And sure enough, when fighting was actually commanded, the verse tells us most of them just turned their backs and walked away.
Okay, part 3, a test of character. This brings us to the next critical filter in this whole process. See, now a leader has to be chosen, and in that moment, the community's own values, what they really care about, are put under a microscope. So before we see who gets picked, just stop and think about it for a second. What are the things that we look for in a leader today, in our world? Is it wealth, a famous last name, popularity? Just kind of keep those ideas in your head as we go to the next part. And there it is. Their prophet tells them, God has appointed Talut, who you might know as Saul, as your king. And the people's reaction? It's instant, and it tells you everything you need to know about where their heads are at. They say, "How can he be king over us? We're more worthy than him, and besides, he doesn't have a ton of money." They're objecting based on these completely worldly things, social status and wealth. They are totally missing the point. This is where the Quran just flips the script and presents a totally revolutionary standard for what makes a good leader. It throws out their criteria, wealth and social status, and replaces them with what actually matters: knowledge, which means strategy and wisdom, and stature, which means physical capability and fitness for the job.
It's about merit, not money. It's about what you can do, not what you have. Now, to help this community, which is clearly still stuck in its old materialistic way of thinking, God sends a sign. And it's a big one. The Ark of the Covenant shows up. But this isn't just some magic trick for show. No, it's a real, tangible symbol of God's endorsement of Talut. It was sent to calm everyone down, to soothe their anxieties, and get them to finally unite behind their new, divinely chosen leader.
Part 4. The Faithful Few. Okay, so now they've got a leader, and they've got a divine sign to back him up. You'd think they're all set, right? Well, not quite. The filtering process is not over. The army is about to face one more test, and this one has nothing to do with how strong they are. It's all about self-control.
So Talut leads his army out, and eventually they come to a river, and he gives them a very, very simple command, a clear instruction. See, this isn't a test of their courage or their fighting skill, it's a test of pure discipline.
The command was so simple. Don't drink from this river. The only exception is you can take a little bit in the palm of your hand. That's it. It was a test of obedience, a test of whether they could control their most basic desires, like thirst. And yet, the verse tells us that almost all of them failed. The vast majority just drank freely. They couldn't resist that simple temptation.
And what that means is that this huge army gets filtered down and down and down until all that's left is a small, truly committed core. And this is such a powerful lesson the Quran is teaching here. Victory doesn't come from massive, undisciplined crowds. It comes from the faithful few, the ones who have mastered themselves first.
Part 5. Victory and a divine law. And this brings us to the climax of the whole story. This tiny group, the ones who have been tested, filtered, and disciplined, they finally come face to face with the massive enemy army, the army of Goliath. They have been purified through all these trials, and now they are finally ready. And just listen to what they pray for in this critical moment. It's so telling. They don't just say, God, give us victory. No, the first thing they ask for is patience. They ask for their feet to be planted firmly. They understand that true strength isn't just about winning. It's about the ability to endure, to stay strong when the odds are completely stacked against you. Their very action has become a form of prayer.
And of course, the result is victory. The small, faithful army defeats the giant force, and a new hero, David, emerges after he slays Goliath. But the story doesn't just end there with happily ever after. The verse goes on, and it reveals the ultimate wisdom, the universal principle behind this entire struggle.
This is the final, universal lesson of the whole passage. It's a principle the Quran calls dafa, which means something like divine defense or checking. And the idea is just profound. Cosmic and social balance in the world is only maintained when a force for good actively stands up to and checks a force for evil. If that struggle doesn't happen, the world just descends into corruption.
And that brings this whole incredible story right back to us here and now. This ancient blueprint for turning fear into faith, for finding real leaders, for understanding why struggle is necessary, it leaves us with one final, very important question to think about. What are the Goliaths of our time? What are today's great challenges? And, maybe more importantly, who are the Davids being called to face